All right. We are live, and this is the DoorGrow Show. Jason Hall here hanging out with Mike Kalis.
You
Did I
got
say
it.
it right? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Great. Mike is, tell us about you and about your business a little bit, and then we're going to get into something I'm completely unfamiliar with, which is options.
Well, so first of all, thank you for having me on the show here, Jason. I kind of dig what you're doing. You're one of the few technology people that's trying to actually be in property management. So I think that's pretty awesome. And I also thank you for spending 30 minutes with me to figure out how to make my video camera work before
Yeah,
we
you
did.
bet.
So you are awesome as far as that goes. My background, I went to college, and during that time, studied marketing. Did a lot of money. Was doing landscaping. Putting bricks into the ground to try to cover things, and decided that wasn't a great way to make money. I started my career with a builder called Pulte Homes. They're based out of Metro Detroit, which is where I happen to be from. They're one of the biggest builders in the United States, and worked there for 3 years. And that was right into the 2007. In Detroit, it was really 2006 and 2007 that things collapsed. It fell apart a little bit quicker than everywhere else. We have that distinction. And we figured out how we could take care of people's old homes if they purchased a new home. So we would use margin from the builder to either purchase the people's old homes, manage the old homes, pretty much whatever it took so that they could get rid of their old property and buy from one of our partner builders. We started that company in '07. It's been 10 years since we've been running Marketplace Homes. We were on the Inc. 500 list 3 or 4 years as one of the fastest growing companies in the country. And, ended up managing, we're going to close in on about 3,000 properties in a couple months here, all across the country in about 28 different states. We have 80 full-time W-2 employees on our staff. Mostly just kind of became an accidental landlord, and somewhere along the line about 2 years ago decided that maybe we needed to stop being accidental and start being intentional and really trying to grow that business.
Okay. So, and how many doors total?
So we have a bunch of deals coming together, but we'll be close to about 3,000 doors in the next month here.
Okay. Great. Gives people kind of perspective. And that's spread out over like how many locations?
28 states.
28 states. Okay. Okay, great. All right. So Mike, so today I asked you, like, what can we talk about that would kind of be unique? Because I love talking with anybody with, a high level of doors or that's created sort of an empire like you have. You figured out a few things here or there that generally, right? And so I was excited about having you on, and I asked you, what's something kind of unique that you could share with my audience? And what you told me was basically how people could grow by offering options.
Yeah.
And so let's start really baby level here for me. Okay. So what are options?
Sure. So, and before I even talk about options, maybe we should talk about why anyone even cares or why they would want to do this as a property manager.
Okay.
We figured out a while back, if you're going to get a grand or two to fill a home and then maybe make $1,000 a year in trails, that's not a ton of revenue. You can make it work, but that's tough. And I'll see property managers do all kinds of things to add, $20 in app fees or $5 in this or $5 in that. What we're going to share on this show today is how you could increase revenue on transactions anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000 upfront. And one of the reasons I want to share this is because I really feel like our industry needs to be more professional. And one of the things that makes us unprofessional is when other businesses don't collect enough money and then are unable to provide the kind of level of service that they need to be able to provide. If you're talking about wanting to grow doors, we generate, 1 to 1,500 owners calling us every month, wanting help with property management. You guys are good at getting that stuff, getting the doors going for that kind of lead gen. But you have to be able to create enough revenue off of each client in order to be able to put the money back into marketing to really blow that up. So the biggest thing to property managers, if you kind of like, what is this lease option that maybe people have been doing this for a long time and they go, I kind of get it. But what I want to share with you on this show is how we're able to generate $1,000 to $5,000 extra on every single transaction through options.
Okay.
So that's why anyone would care. You're kind of asking
money, and everybody, that's a great why. More revenue, more money is a great, and there's a benefit also, I think, for the customers that you're getting this money from as well, right?
Yep. So the biggest benefit is that not every owner, but a lot of owners will call and say, man, if I could just sell this house, that would be great.
Okay.
But the math doesn't work. I need to get 150 grand. And we look at it and we go, ugh, it's probably worth 130. So we always say it's not a matter of if I can get you 150,000, it's when. Is it in 12 months, 24 months, 36? I don't know. But at some point in time, I should be able to get you the dollar amount that you're talking about. Would you be interested in us working with a rent-to-own client that might be willing to purchase your home down the road at a higher value that your home might be at that time? So there's a big benefit to an owner because they could potentially sell the home without transaction costs, right? So they don't have to pay a real estate commission. They don't have to turn the property. There's always some sort of work that you need to do to the home when a tenant moves out if you're going to get it ready for sale, carpet, paint, whatnot. And they don't have to have any rent loss, which is going to be another big loser. So they might have to sit, even in a good market, it could take a few months for the home to, sell and then be able to actually close it. They would have rent loss. So the owner saves all of those things. The tenant, we like to say that we're in the second chance business. They might have something on their credit. Maybe it's not perfect. They've been renters for a long time, and we want to try to make them an owner. In most cases, their payment is going to drop, big time if they're able to actually own the property. They might be paying, $1,500 a month on a $150,000 home, but if they buy it, their payment could be $900 a month. So there's a huge advantage if they're able to buy it. And then to the property manager, you're able to make some of the fees off of the options up front, so you can help have a reason and create some alignment to want to see a door go out the door. Because otherwise, if you're a property manager, you don't really want the tenant to buy it because then you would lose that management.
Right. So how do you convince the renters to do this? Because it sounds like my mind is thinking, well, somebody's got to lose here. Somebody's going to be spending maybe more money or something like that. And that would probably be the renter in hopes of being able to buy it, or?
Yeah, so it's really not, right? So there's going to be pros and cons to each side of this transaction. Here's ways that everyone could potentially lose, I suppose. So a tenant could maybe put down $1,000 or $2,000 on an option to purchase. And if they don't exercise the option, they would lose that money. The owner, sometimes we get these objections, is they'll set a price. Say that example before, a home that they wanted 150 and so they set an option at 150 and today it's only worth 130, but lo and behold, the market jumps big time and all of a sudden it's worth 160. Well, now the tenant can exercise an option at 150 and the owner would have to stick to it. Now we think that, pigs get fat and hogs get slaughtered. So, I mean, if you have a price that's, 20 grand more than today's price and they're able to do that in the future, maybe that's a win. But, it really is something where everyone can win. If the market goes up a bit and the tenant's able to purchase it, it's a big winner. So I don't know. Those are some of the pros and cons.
Okay, cool. So how would a property manager get started doing this? How would this work for them?
Okay. Yeah, so there's a couple different ways that we'll structure options with owners. And I think first is kind of what is an option? Mm-hmm. So an option is just an agreement between two parties to purchase a property during a set period of time for a set price. So often with an owner, we'll say, hey, we would like you to assign our company, Marketplace Homes, the right to be able to buy your home for $150,000. And we would have the right to buy that for the next, say, 36 months. We would then take that option and we go to the tenant, and we typically a markup for us is about $5,000. So we try to make about $5,000 on that transaction. And we would go to the tenant and say, would you like to purchase an option to be able to buy this property for $155,000? And that's a typical transaction. And then we'll sell that option for something, usually between $1,000 to $5,000. And that's where if people were tuning in and kind of going, how would I make $5,000? It's that is you just say, hey, for $5,000, you would have the right to buy this property for $155,000, and you have 36 months or whatever the term was that was agreed upon to exercise that. If you don't exercise it, you'd lose your money. But if you do, the funds that you put down could go down as a down payment. And that's typically how a lease option works. So one way for the property manager to do this is to assign the option to them and then reassign the option and mark it up to the tenant. If you had some owners that didn't want you to do that, a different way to do it is to assign the option directly to the tenant and then maybe just take a cut of that option fee when you do that. Either way it is fair. It just depends on what each party's looking for.
Okay, great. So how are you using this to help grow the property management business? It's adding revenue, and then what are you doing?
Well, if you're able to drive up the marginal revenue off of each transaction, then you can drive up the amount of money that you can reinvest into marketing and other things to go and get more clients. You can also add more to your team. Instead of being kind of a one-man shop out there, let's say that you put together a property management deal and you get, $1,000 up front and $100 trail. We actually charge a flat $90 fee is what we do. So it'd probably be $90. Okay. So you got $1,000, you've got, for us, we view that all as costs, right? So that's the cost of acquisition, the cost to pay our commissions, photography, signage, lock boxes, all that stuff. And then we're trying to kind of survive off of that trail. Well, if you could add $5,000 to that whole entire equation changes, right? So, I mean, if you can get $1,000 to fill the home plus $5,000 when a tenant goes into the property, now all of a sudden you've got some capital up front, so you can continue to keep rocking. Last month we marketed 150 properties. I mean, if you make $1,000 on each one, that's one number. If you make $5,000 on each one, that's a different number. And that really changes your ability to grow as a company. And you can't do an option on every single transaction. That wouldn't make sense. But what if, our goal is usually 15, 20%, might be viable for a lease option.
Okay. So maybe 15 to 20% you're doing lease option. All right. And I love this idea because the accidental investors are typically the people that you make the least amount of revenue off of, because these accidental investors just want to get out of the property as soon as possible. And so unless you can either convert them to a long-term buy and hold strategy, or I guess this other option, you can do a, this lease option with them. It's not going to, it's not going to be profitable. And a lot of people try to just avoid these accidental investors so that they have a property on for, instead of 1 year, 3 years, 5 years, because that's a big multiplier. And so I love this idea. So let's take a look specifically. If they were looking into their portfolio right now and they're like, okay, maybe I have 15 to 20% I could explore a lease option with, how would they identify which ones are ideal for this?
So it has everything to do with the values, right? So I'll have homeowners and property managers call and say, well, Mike, how many people actually exercise these things? And the answer is, if the home is worth more than the option, 100%, everyone does. If the home is worth less than the option, no one does. So, I mean, it's really, the better pricing you can give me, the better the chances that somebody's going to be able to exercise it, the more you can charge a tenant for it, right? If they had an option to buy a home at 150 and we looked at everything and it looks like it's worth 150 today, well, maybe they should put down more than $5,000 to lock in that price and have that set for the next couple of years while they work on improving their credit. So the values and where everyone's at is going to make a big difference. Great place to start is to look at all of your owners and kind of go, hey, what's the number that you need? And then take a look at the property and say, how far off is this home from where they need to be? Is this somebody that if they could just sell the home would be thrilled to just sell the home? You know, and if all those things check, you can kind of call the owner and just say, hey, I have kind of an idea here. If I could get a tenant in the property that might be willing to buy it, would you like that? And what price would you love? And then just call the tenant and say, hey, you know, neat opportunity. The owner's willing to lock in a price for you. You might have to put a little bit of money down, but if you're open to it, it's the first step towards actually owning a home. You know, would you like to own the home that you're in? And like I said, it's not going to be everybody. But for some of those equations, that can be really good. Tends to work better on single family homes, less on condos. Tends to work better when there's 3 or more bedrooms. Tends to work a little bit better when it's more of that neighborhood kind of home where really it's a family that's just trying to build some roots. Those are some indicators and things that it might be a good candidate.
Okay, great. So, so I'm in a rental right now. It's a 3-bedroom home. It's in a nice neighborhood. I've got this landlord who I can tell doesn't like the property. She doesn't like having to deal with it. She used to have 20 properties of her own. She sold them all off except this one. And I know because my mom's an agent, I had her look it up. The only reason she hasn't probably sold this one is because she's upside down, right? She's waiting till it accrues a certain dollar amount so she can get out of it. And I feel, so as me being a tenant, I feel like reaching out to her every time I need a request done feels uncomfortable. Like I'm annoying her. Like she doesn't, and she takes too long to deal with stuff, right? Sometimes. So if she's listening, sorry, you know, but she's got other things on her plate, right? So how would I approach in this situation saying, hey, would you be open to this lease only option?
Okay,
we'll do a reverse example here.
For you, I mean, the first question is just would your payment be more or less if you owned the home versus rented it?
Right, probably less for sure. Here in SoCal,
okay, because in some cases it's not. You know, I've had some people that I have a home and they'll say like, actually, I got a heck of a rental rate, and then you might want a really, really long option where you're just kind of going like, I'm kind of happy just milking this baby along.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if your payment was a little less, that's a plus. And then the other thing would just be like, would it be interesting if you could eventually buy the home with basically no money down?
Right. Yeah, and that would be nice too.
Business owner, so I'm always trying to maximize cash flow, you know, and trying to not tie up capital in different things because I always think I have some genius idea that I can go put money into, you know. So trying to stretch those dollars as much as I can. So a way to structure that might be interesting if I were a tenant and trying to make it as advantageous for me as possible would be I'd ask for an option. I would ask to put no money down, and I would tell her that I'd like a $500 credit from every month's worth of rent, you know, that would go towards that purchase price. And then what's kind of unique about this is oftentimes a lender will be able to recognize those credits as your funds, which can then be used as a down payment. So $500 after 12 months would be $6,000. After 2 years would be 12. You could kind of drag that out. You could make that number bigger or smaller. You're in California, so I know that $500 is nothing. That's like a nice lunch. In the Midwest, that would go pretty far. I suppose it depends on where you're at. But that would be a neat way to structure that. And then here's what's great about it for you as a tenant. If the next big housing crisis happens and prices plummet, you just don't buy it.
Right.
But if everything continues to skyrocket and you know, jobs are just exploding and everything is great, and in 2 or 3 years down the road, you know, whatever the dollar amount is that you have on it looks like that's actually a little bit under market. Well, now you either buy it, you reassign your option and sell it to somebody else if you just want to live somewhere else. I don't know, you would find some way to exercise that. Even if it was a home that you wanted to stay in or not, because there's some good value there. I think to the owner, they would probably push back and ask for a little bit of cash down. and so I guess that's kind of the negotiation there is to, usually an owner is going to say, I want $1 million down, and the tenant's going to say, I don't want to put anything down. And it's just trying to find the ground in the middle that makes sense.
Right. All right, cool. So when you first started doing these lease options or these rent to own situations, what were some of the initial pitfalls and mistakes that you learned that you think others can avoid?
I don't know that there really was any giant pitfalls other than to say it was something we just sort of began offering because there was a period of time where you just talked to so many people and they just say, really, if I could just sell the home, I would. And that was always just the words right out of their mouth. And we would kind of say, well, okay, what price would you like to sell it at? And they'd give you a price and you go, well, that's not going to work right now. And they would kind of nod and go, yeah, I know. And say, all right, well, why don't you just, give us the right to be able to buy it. So I don't know. I mean, things that we didn't do right out of the gate, you should probably sign a purchase agreement with the seller. And then you want to sign an option that gives you the right to exercise that purchase agreement. At first, we didn't do a full purchase agreement. And then small things became a problem, right? So you think the only thing to put in there is the price, $150,000. Well, who pays for taxes, how you prorate things, who's responsible for what? All of that stuff is very important. And I think the first year that we did this, we did not many of them, and we didn't have all the paperwork put together. So, probably getting the paperwork in alignment, making sure that the tenant really understands that this is a non-refundable option fee. We put that big bold letters. Hey, you've got to exercise it. You've got to give us notice, 30 days prior, or else you could forfeit this, because there are some that once they get in the money, the owner's basically just hoping they don't buy it, so that they can maybe go and resell it. And if the tenant waits past that time, then, they no longer have a right to buy it, and making sure everybody understands that. But for the most part, it's just kind of a neat thing to do that I think offers homeowners and tenants something a little more than just, answering a service call.
No, I love it. I love it. So where would people go to? So I'm guessing realtors could probably figure this out if they're also doing property management. But if they're just property managers, a lot of this stuff sounds very real estate-ish, and they're a little nervous about the forms and the documentation. Where would you recommend they go to get the right documentation, documents, and formatting, and for all this stuff? Where would you kind of point them?
I don't know. No, okay. I think that every state's a little different. Usually you can go on to the MLS in any local market, and they'd be able to give you the right purchase agreement for that state.
Okay.
You could probably go online and Google option agreement. For us personally, we talk to our attorneys and they kind of draw some stuff up. I'm a big fan of simplicity. So a lot of attorneys don't really love my agreements. Often they're 1 or 2 pages and that's it.
Right.
For our clientele and the people that we work with, we want to keep things in language that everyone can understand. We don't ever want somebody coming back and saying, hey, that I didn't read the fine print, or I didn't know what was going on. It's our lease and management agreements are 2 pages long, and it's bullet pointed, and most of the bullet points are 1 or 2 sentences long. So I am a little different from most attorneys. Will go through and make a 600-page document. But the problem is you initial every page on the bottom, you sign the thing off, and then something a month later goes wrong, and you call and they say, well, didn't you check, page 54, subsection 307? Yeah. And, of course they didn't. Whereas we can kind of say hey, there's 10 paragraphs, each one's 1 or 2 sentences. And paragraph 7 says, this is a non-refundable option deposit. So, it's not that hard to figure out. I don't know. That's our theory.
Okay, cool. And so would your purchase agreement in your special bullet point option agreement, is that something you'd be willing to share, or is it something you feel is kind of proprietary?
Well, I could share it, but it's just going to be different for every single state.
Sure. And I think it's helpful for people to have a starting point. And so if you'd be willing to, that'd be really cool. We could put a link to that or something later.
Yeah, send me an email. I can shoot you over some of the documents and different stuff that we do on that. And then that would just be my only caveat is,
right.
Because we have 28 different states. So there's a whole bunch of different versions where they're kind of similar, but sometimes there's different little rules and nuances.
Right. So the big disclaimer is you got to probably have a lawyer check it out like you did and make sure this is all applicable to your state and do it right. And I'm sure everybody listening to this would not do anything other than that. So so make sure it's valid. But I like your idea of making sure that it is any sort of agreement is in plain, human, easy to read language so they understand what they're getting into and that they can't, I think that's going to prevent a lot of misunderstandings and challenges later on. And I like the idea of breaking it up into bullet points, maybe even adding headings here or there. We want to make content easy for people in general, right? So cool. Well, Mike, I appreciate you coming out. How can people check out your business? What, how can they get a hold of you, or what do you want people's big takeaway to be?
Yeah, so I mean, more than anything is I like what you're doing here as far as just creating a forum where other property managers can share ideas. I kind of dig the Facebook thing. I posted something on there this past week, and it was nice to get 30 other property managers kind of chiming in, and at least a bunch of people that seemed like they had my back, right? Other people going, yes. Man, we get what you're going through. That's cool because we're not always able to connect. But my big thing is I just think as an industry, we have to get more professional. There's way too many people out there that are one or two guy shops that are doing everything that they can, that are busting their butt. I've been there. I started with one home in my basement and managing properties. But having gone through that, I understand how stressful that is. And being able to break through some walls and get to a place where you can have different teams of people that are focused on different things is really, really important. So I just love everybody having a forum to share ideas. This one's kind of cool. It's about options. If that's interesting to people, that's great. Our company is trying to grow to 5,000 homes by the end of the year and 10,000 homes by the end of next year. We're doing that organically, adding 100 plus properties just one at a time every month.
Nice.
And then the other way that we're doing that is through acquisitions and strategic partnerships. And so, if anybody's out there in an area and they want to chat, we would love to talk. My website is marketplacehomes.com. There's a tab on the bottom that says Talk to Mike. You can just click that. I get all those emails. I check them. That comes from tenants and owners and anybody interested in anything. So we get all kinds of stuff on there. The other thing would be, either, probably LinkedIn. Just look up Mike Kalis. But it's great being on the show. I really appreciate it, man. And my hope is that I can learn how to grow a really cool mustache like you have there.
Yeah, it's just awesome. Get really lazy and don't cut it. That's it. You just don't cut it. No.
I'm jealous.
It takes some work, I guess. So, hey, pleasure to have you on, Mike. It's each time we've talked, it's been great getting to know you. And like Mike mentioned, for those listening, do check out the DoorGrow Club. If you go to doorgrowclub.com, that goes to the Facebook group. The level of interaction in there has just been incredible. And the group's relatively small right now. I think we're getting closer to about 300 members already. And we just started using the Facebook group for the DoorGrow Club like a couple of weeks ago. And so the momentum there is pretty strong. So make sure you pop in there. And I think it's going to be a great resource for property managers to get real and raw with each other. And it's for property management entrepreneurs. So don't add your staff, don't add everybody in your business. It's really for the broker owners. We want to keep this tight, and it's for the people that really are decision makers, so they can talk about the tough stuff they need to be doing in their business. So,
by the way, that's so cool because we went on there. I actually posted something about a lawsuit we had. Right? We all don't like to talk about things that go bad.
Yeah.
But we threw it out there, and I think I had 30 other responses. To things that were going on, people that have had similar situations, different things happen, because we all have owners and tenants that we have challenges with. And I think if we can all kind of hang out together and just share best practices, and I don't know, if nothing else, at least just know that somebody else has had the same challenge that you had. Share some ideas, learn that, the older I get, the more I realize I know less. I thought I was brilliant when I was like 20. By the time I was 30, I realized I didn't know a whole lot. And the older I keep getting, the more I'm like, man, I don't know a darn thing. So, being able to share with everyone else that's in a similar business has just been great. And thank you for setting that up. Pretty cool.
Yeah, appreciate that. So, well, cool. Mike, it's been a pleasure having you, and I'll let you get back to your fantastic day.
You too. Thanks, man.
Bye-bye.